I was standing at the check-in counter at Los Angeles International Airport, my boarding pass halfway to the agent, when my younger sister Lauren's hand connected with my face so hard, the sound echoed through the terminal. The slap was so sudden, so vicious, that I stumbled backward into a rope barrier. Hundreds of passengers turned to stare. My cheek burned, my eyes watered, and before I could even process what had just happened, my parents rushed over and my mother grabbed my arm. "Christina, apologize to your sister right now. How could you ruin this trip before it even started?" My father's face was red with anger, all of it directed at me. Not at Lauren, who had just assaulted me in public. At me. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had paid for every single part of this vacation. $11,000, my entire year-end bonus. Without saying a word, I pulled out my phone and opened the airline app. Let me back up so you understand how I got here. Standing in an airport with a handprint on my face and my family acting like I'm the problem. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent my entire life being the invisible daughter. Lauren is 28, 4 years younger than me, and she has always been the golden child. Always. When we were kids, her dance recitals were mandatory family events. My academic awards ceremonies? My parents usually had to work at the hardware store they owned. When Lauren wanted to try modeling, they paid for professional photo shoots. When I needed textbooks for community college, I worked double shifts at a coffee shop to buy them myself. I'm not saying this to sound bitter, though I guess I am bitter. I'm saying it because it's the truth. My parents, Patricia and Frank, have always believed that Lauren needed more support, more attention, more everything. She was sensitive, she was creative, she needed to be nurtured. I was the responsible one, the one who figured things out on my own, so I didn't need as much. That's what they told themselves anyway. That's what they still tell themselves. Lauren has had 12 jobs in the past 5 years. 12. She's quit most of them within 3 months because the managers were mean, or the customers were rude, or the work was beneath her. She still lives at home with our parents in their 3-bedroom house in suburban Los Angeles. She doesn't pay rent. She barely contributes to groceries. And every few months, she needs a loan. For a new laptop. For a trip with friends. For a business idea that never goes anywhere. She never pays them back, but my parents never ask her to. They just quietly absorb the cost and tighten their belts. Meanwhile, I worked my way through community college while waiting tables and cleaning houses. Then I transferred to California State University and finished my degree in finance while working 3 part-time jobs. Now, I'm a senior financial analyst at a mid-size investment firm in Century City. I have my own apartment, I pay all my own bills, and I've built a decent life for myself. I visit my parents every other Sunday for dinner. I help them with their taxes. I fixed their website when they were losing customers to big box stores. But I've never been celebrated the way Lauren is celebrated just for showing up. 3 months ago, I suggested we all take a trip together to celebrate my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. I thought maybe a vacation would be good for all of us. Maybe away from the daily grind, we could actually connect. Lauren immediately loved the idea and started planning activities. My parents were excited, but mentioned money was tight. The hardware store has been struggling. I knew they couldn't afford a real vacation, so I made a decision. I would pay for everything and tell them it was partially covered through work connections. I didn't want them to feel indebted or refuse out of pride. I wanted to do something nice. I wanted to feel like I mattered. So I booked first-class tickets for my parents, premium economy for Lauren and me. I reserved ocean view rooms at a 4-star resort in Maui. I prepaid for a sunset dinner cruise, a snorkeling trip, and a spa day for my mother. I spent $11,000, my entire annual bonus, every cent I had saved for this one gesture. The morning of the trip, I drove to my parents' house at 4 a.m. to take everyone to the airport. Lauren was in a terrible mood from the moment she got in my car. She snapped at our dad for putting his suitcase in the wrong spot. She complained that the trip was only 5 days instead of a week. She whined that she wanted to stay at a resort shed seen on Instagram that cost $800 a night. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to start the trip with an argument. My parents nervously laughed it off. "You know how Lauren gets when she's tired," my mother said. "Just let her wake up." At the airport, everything seemed fine until we got to the check-in counter. The airline agent asked for my credit card, the one I'd used to make the booking. She needed to verify it for some reason, a standard security check. Lauren was standing right next to me. She heard the agent say my name. She saw the card in my hand. Her face went pale, then bright red. She grabbed my elbow and yanked me away from the counter. Her voice was low and furious. "You paid for this? So now you get to lord it over us the whole trip? You get to play the big hero." I tried to explain that it was a gift, no strings attached. I just wanted us to have a nice time together. But Lauren's voice got louder. "You always have to be the savior, don't you? Always showing off your money, making the rest of us feel like garbage." People were starting to stare. I felt my face get hot. I tried to calm her down, but she was spiraling. And then she hit me. Hard, right across the face in front of hundreds of travelers. My parents rushed over, and Lauren immediately burst into tears. She's so good at that, at making herself the victim in any situation. She's been bragging about paying for everything. Lauren sobbed, pointing at me like I'd committed some unforgivable crime, making us all feel like charity cases, like we can't afford our own vacation. My mother put her arm around Lauren. My father turned to me with that disappointed look I've seen my entire life. "How could you embarrass your sister like this, Christina? This is exactly like you. Always making everything about you." I stood there, my cheek throbbing, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. Passengers were whispering. A security guard was watching from 10 feet away, and my family, the people who were supposed to love me, were acting like I was the villain in this story. So I opened my phone. I pulled up the airline app, and I canceled 3 tickets. My parents' first-class seats, Lauren's premium economy seat. Refund processing, $9,200. I kept only my own ticket. I looked up at my shocked family and said quietly, "Enjoy figuring out your own vacation." Then I walked toward security alone. My father called after me. My mother shouted my name. Lauren screamed something I couldn't hear over the roar of blood in my ears. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I went through security, and I left them standing there in the terminal. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. I sat at my gate, hands shaking so badly I had to put my phone in my lap. My face still stung where Lauren had hit me. I could feel the eyes of other passengers on me. Some sympathetic, some curious. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind the last 30 minutes and make different choices. But I also felt something else underneath the panic and grief. I felt free. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Text after text, call after call. I glanced at the screen. My father, "Christina. This is childish. Get back here right now." My mother, "How could you do this to your sister? She's devastated." And Lauren, of course, "You're a selfish witch. I hope you're happy." I silenced my phone and shoved it into my bag. I couldn't deal with them right now. I could barely deal with myself. A woman sitting 2 seats away from me leaned over and offered me a tissue. She looked to be in her early 60s, with short silver hair and kind eyes. "I saw what happened back there," she said gently. "Good for you, honey." I took the tissue and wiped my eyes, trying not to smudge my mascara, even though it was probably already ruined. "I don't know if it was good," I said. "I might have just destroyed my family." The woman shook her head. "If your family can be destroyed by you setting a boundary, then it wasn't much of a family to begin with." We talked for a few minutes. Her name was Dorothy, and she was traveling alone to Maui to scatter her late husband's ashes at a beach they'd visited on their honeymoon 40 years ago. "I spent my whole marriage putting everyone else first," she told me. "My husband, my kids, my parents. I loved them all. But I lost myself along the way. Don't make my mistake, sweetheart. Don't wait until you're 63 to figure out that you matter too." When they called my boarding group, Dorothy squeezed my hand. "Have a beautiful trip. You deserve it." I thanked her and got in line, feeling slightly less alone than I had 5 minutes ago. Strangers were being kinder to me than my own family. That thought made me want to cry all over again. On the plane, I settled into my seat by the window and tried to focus on something, anything, other than what had just happened. But my mind kept replaying it. The slap. My parents' immediate blame, the way Lauren made herself the victim even though she was the one who'd hit me. I kept thinking about all the times they'd chosen her over me. All the times I'd swallowed my hurt and pretended it was fine. All the years I'd spent trying to earn their love by being useful, by being easy, by asking for nothing. A flight attendant noticed I was crying and brought me extra snacks and a bottle of water. "Rough day?" she asked sympathetically. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She patted my shoulder. "Well, you're heading to paradise. That should help." I wanted to believe her. But paradise felt pretty far away when your heart was breaking at 30,000 feet. I barely slept on the flight. When I did doze off, I dreamed of being a kid again. I was maybe 7 or 8, standing in the garage of our old house. I'd just won second place in a county-wide math competition. And I was so proud. I'd brought the certificate home to show my parents. But when I walked into the kitchen, they were throwing a surprise party for Lauren. She'd gotten the lead in her elementary school play. The kitchen was full of balloons and cake and relatives. Nobody even noticed me holding my certificate. I ended up putting it in a drawer in my room. And as far as I know, my parents never saw it. When the plane landed in Maui, the sky was the kind of perfect blue you only see in photographs. Palm trees swayed in the breeze. The air smelled like flowers and ocean salt. It should have been magical. Instead, it felt surreal and hollow. I collected my suitcase, got a rental car, and drove to the resort in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of my thoughts spinning. The resort was beautiful. 4 stars right on the beach, with white buildings and tropical gardens and a massive pool that sparkled in the afternoon sun. The front desk staff greeted me warmly and asked if my family would be arriving later. I lied and said they'd had a last-minute change of plans. The young woman checking me in made a sympathetic face and upgraded my room for free. "So you have a little extra space to spread out," she said kindly. I almost started crying again right there in the lobby. My room was on the 4th floor with a balcony that overlooked the ocean. It was gorgeous. Pale blue walls, a king-size bed with white linens, a sitting area with a couch and a coffee table. I unpacked my suitcase slowly, hanging up dresses I'd bought specifically for this trip. Dresses I'd imagined wearing to dinners with my family. Now I'd be wearing them alone. I sat on the balcony as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. I ordered room service because I couldn't face going to a restaurant by myself. A burger and fries and a glass of wine that tasted like disappointment. I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Birthday parties where Lauren was the center of attention. Graduations where my parents looked tired and distracted. Holiday dinners where I was always the one setting the table and cleaning up. I realized something as I looked through those pictures. I could barely find any photos of my own milestones. My college graduation. My first day at my current job. The time I ran a half marathon and finished in under 2 hours. None of those moments had been documented or celebrated. But there were hundreds of photos of Lauren. Lauren at dance recitals. Lauren blowing out birthday candles. Lauren opening Christmas presents. I was about to put my phone away when there was a knock at my door. I glanced at the clock. It was 9 in the evening. Who could possibly be knocking? I opened the door, expecting hotel staff. Instead, I found Marcus standing there with his wife, Angela. Marcus is one of my colleagues at work, someone I've known for about 6 years. We're not best friends, but we're friendly. Has always been kind to me, always treated me with respect. And here he was, in Maui, staring at me with concern written all over his face. "Christina? What are you doing here? And why do you look like you've been crying?" Marcus asked. Angela, a petite woman with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, peeked around him. "We're staying here for our 10th anniversary," she explained. "We saw your name on the guest list in the lobby when we were asking about restaurant reservations." Small world. She paused, taking in my red eyes and exhausted expression. "Are you okay?" I opened my mouth to say I was fine, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I started crying. Again. Marcus and Angela exchanged a glance, and then Angela gently pushed past me into the room. "Okay, sit down. Tell us what happened." So I did. I told them everything. The vacation I'd planned and paid for, the The slap at the airport? My parents' immediate blame. The way Id canceled their tickets and walked away. By the time I finished, Angela had her arms around me, and Marcus was pacing the room, visibly angry. They hit you? In public? And your parents blamed you? His voice was incredulous. That's insane, Christina. That's abuse. Angela pulled back and looked me in the eyes. You know what? You're spending tomorrow with us. We're not taking no for an answer. You shouldn't be alone right now. I tried to protest. This was their anniversary trip. They didn't need me tagging along. But Marcus shook his head. We want you there. Seriously. We're doing a snorkeling trip tomorrow. You should come. For the first time since the airport, I felt a tiny flicker of something that might have been hope. Or maybe just relief. I wasn't completely alone. I had people who actually cared. Okay, I said quietly. Thank you. After they left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I thought about Dorothy on the plane telling me not to make her mistake. I thought about Marcus' anger on my behalf. I thought about Angela hugging me like I mattered. And I realized something. Maybe Id lost my family today, but maybe Id also found something more important. The beginning of knowing my own worth. The next morning, I met Marcus and Angela for breakfast at the resort's open-air restaurant. The sun was bright, the ocean breeze was perfect, and the fruit on my plate tasted like summer. For a few minutes, I could almost forget the disaster of the day before. Almost. Marcus ordered coffee and asked how Id slept. Honestly, terribly, I admitted. Angela reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's completely understandable. You went through something traumatic. We talked about work for a while, safe topics that didn't require me to think about my family. Marcus mentioned a project Id led last quarter that had saved the company over $200,000. Richard was so impressed. He said, referring to our boss. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. It was the same excursion Id booked for my family, part of the package Id carefully planned. It imagined us all swimming together, laughing, taking photos. Instead, I was here with my colleague and his wife. People who'd known me for a fraction of the time my family had but treated me with infinitely more kindness. The boat was a large catamaran with about 30 other tourists. The crew was friendly and enthusiastic, handing out snorkel gear and explaining the best techniques for breathing underwater. We sailed out to a coral reef about 20 minutes from shore, and the water was so clear I could see fish swimming below the surface before we even got in. When I finally jumped in, it was like entering another world. The water was warm and calm. Bright yellow fish darted around coral formations. A sea turtle glided past me, ancient and unbothered. I floated on the surface, breathing slowly through the snorkel, and for the first time in 24 hours, my mind went quiet. When I surfaced, I was laughing. Actually laughing. Marcus swam over, grinning. See? You don't need toxic people to have a good time. Angela floated nearby, her face serene. This is what life should feel like, Christina. Light. Free. Not constantly walking on eggshells. They were right. I'd been walking on eggshells my entire life, trying not to upset Lauren, trying not to burden my parents, trying to be small and easy and invisible. And where had it gotten me? Slapped in an airport and blamed for my own abuse. Back on the boat, I made the mistake of checking my phone. 53 missed calls, dozens of texts. Most were from my parents, and the tone had shifted from angry to desperate. My father. You've left us stranded. We had to book last-minute flights at 3 times the price. Do you know what this cost us? My mother. Your sister is having panic attacks. She can't stop crying. I hope you can live with yourself. There were a few from Lauren, too, mostly calling me names I won't repeat. But then I saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Christina? This is your Aunt Diane. Your cousin Emma gave me your number. We need to talk about your parents and Lauren. Call me when you can. I stared at the message, confused. Aunt Diane was my father's older sister, but I hadn't spoken to her in over 15 years. There had been some kind of falling out when I was a teenager, and my parents had cut her off completely. They never explained why, just said that Diane was jealous and bitter and we were better off without her. I'd been too young to question it, but now, seeing her name on my screen, I felt a jolt of curiosity mixed with unease. I excused myself from Marcus and Angela and went to a quiet corner of the boat. My hands were shaking as I dialed Diane's number. She answered on the second ring. "Christina? Oh, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for years." Her voice was warm and urgent, nothing like the jealous, bitter person my parents had described. "What's going on?" I asked. "Why are you calling me now?" Diane took a deep breath. "I saw your name pop up in a family group chat I'm somehow still in. Your cousin Emma sent me screenshots of what happened at the airport, and I need to tell you something. Something you deserve to know." My heart started pounding. "Okay," I said slowly. "I'm listening." 15 years ago, I confronted your parents about the way they were treating you compared to Lauren. You were just a kid, but it was already so obvious. They expected you to be perfect while Lauren got away with everything. I told them they were damaging you. They didn't want to hear it. Diane's voice was tight with old anger. Then they asked me for money, $20,000. They said it was for an investment in Lauren's future, some modeling opportunity that required upfront costs. I'm a retired accountant, Christina. I knew it was a scam. I refused to give them the money, and I told them they were enabling Lauren's entitlement. So they cut me off, told the whole family I was jealous and cruel. I tried to reach out to you over the years, but they always intercepted my letters and emails. I felt sick. My parents had lied to me about Diane. They'd isolated her because Shed tried to protect me. "That's not all," Diane continued, her voice dropping. "Christina, your parents took out a credit card in your name when you were 19. They ran up $12,000 in debt to fund Lauren's business ideas, photography equipment, a website, promotional materials, none of which ever went anywhere. I found out by accident when I was helping a friend with credit fraud issues and saw your name come up in a database search. I tried to tell you, but your parents intercepted my letters. You need to check your credit report. The account might still be there. It probably tanked your score for years." The world tilted. I grabbed the boat railing to steady myself. Credit card fraud. Identity theft. My own parents. Suddenly, so many things made sense. Why Id had trouble renting my first apartment. Why my car loan had such a terrible interest rate. Why I'd been denied a credit card when I was 22 despite having a job and no debt that I knew of. I'd thought it was a mistake. I'd spent years trying to fix my credit without understanding why it was damaged in the first place. And all along, it was my parents, stealing from me to give to Lauren. "Christina, are you still there?" Diane's voice was worried. "I'm here," I managed to say. I can't believe this. "I'm so sorry," Diane said. "I should have tried harder to reach you. I should have gone to your college, shown up at your dorm. I was just so angry at your parents, and I didn't know how to get around them." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Lauren. I told Diane I'd call her back and, against my better judgment, answered my sister's call. She was crying hysterically, her words tumbling over each other so fast I could barely understand her. "Mom and Dad are furious with me. This is all your fault. You ruined everything." I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Tell me about the credit card, Lauren." The crying stopped abruptly. There was a long silence. "What credit card?" Her voice had changed, wary now. "The one opened in my name when I was 19. The one Mom and Dad used to buy things for you." Another silence, longer this time. Then Lauren said quietly, "That was so long ago. Why does it even matter now?" My blood turned to ice. She knew. She'd known all along. "So you knew," I said. "You all knew." Lauren's voice turned defensive. "You were at college. You had student loans anyway. We needed the money for my portfolio shoot. It's not like you were using your credit for anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was admitting to fraud, to theft, and acting like it was no big deal, like I should have just accepted it. "I've been paying for your mistakes my entire life," I said, my voice shaking. And you've never once been grateful. Never once acknowledged it. Lauren exploded. Maybe if you weren't so stuck up and perfect all the time, we could have talked about it? You were always the smart one, the responsible one. I needed help. The gaslighting was so blatant, I almost laughed. Almost. You're 28 years old, Lauren. When does it end? When do you take responsibility for your own life? She screamed something I couldn't make out, and then the line went dead. Shed hung up on me. I stood there on the boat, the Hawaiian sun beating down, tourists laughing and taking photos, and I felt like I was in a nightmare. My family had stolen from me. They'd committed fraud in my name. They'd damaged my credit and my future and never told me. And when confronted, they'd acted like I was the problem. I thought about going back to Marcus and Angela, but I needed a minute to process. So I sat down on a bench and stared at the ocean, trying to make sense of a family that had never made sense at all. By the time we got back to the resort, I was numb. Marcus and Angela could tell something had happened, but they didn't push me to talk. Angela just said, "When you're ready, we're here." I thanked them and went back to my room, immediately pulling up my credit report on my laptop. And there it was. A credit card account opened 16 years ago when I was 19 years old. $12,700 in charges, defaulted. Sent to collections. It had tanked my credit score for years, making it nearly impossible to rent apartments, get reasonable interest rates, or qualify for loans. I'd always thought it was identity theft by a stranger. I'd spent hours on the phone with credit bureaus trying to figure it out, but the trail was old and complicated, and eventually, I'd given up and just worked on rebuilding my credit slowly over time. But it wasn't a stranger. It was my parents. People who were supposed to protect me, not steal from me. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Diane. She called me back within minutes. "I'm so sorry, Christina. I wish I'd done more." I told her it wasn't her fault. Shed tried. Shed been shut out just like I was starting to realize it'd been shut out my whole life. Just in a different way. Diane gave me the name of a lawyer who specialized in family fraud cases. Even this many years later, you have options. Civil action, at the very least. What they did is illegal. I didn't know if I wanted to press charges against my own parents. The thought made me feel sick. But I also couldn't just pretend this hadn't happened. I called Marcus and asked if he and Angela could meet me for dinner. I needed people who weren't going to gaslight me or make excuses. They agreed immediately and met me at a restaurant down the beach from the resort. Over fresh fish and coconut shrimp, I told them everything. The credit card fraud, Lauren's admission, my Aunt Diane's revelations. Marcus was furious. "You could press charges. You should press charges." Angela, who I learned worked as a paralegal, nodded. What they did is identity theft. The statute of limitations might still allow for civil action, especially if you can prove you only recently discovered the fraud. Angela made a call to a lawyer friend who specialized in these cases. The lawyer said I had a strong case, and that even years later, I could pursue restitution, especially since I'd been unaware of the fraud for so long. But as I sat there listening to Angela talk about legal strategies and documentation, I felt overwhelmed. I'd come to Hawaii for a vacation, to celebrate my parents' anniversary, and now I was discussing suing them. How had my life become this? That night, as I was brushing my teeth and trying to calm down enough to sleep, I got an email notification from the airline. My parents and Lauren had successfully booked new flights to Maui using an emergency credit card. They were landing in 4 hours. The email had been copied to me because I was still listed as the trip organizer in the resort system. They were coming here. To confront me. Marcus called me immediately. "Do you want to face them? Or do we help you check into a different hotel?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to run, to disappear and never see them again. But another part of me, a part that was tired of running and hiding and making myself small, said no. "I'm staying. If they want to talk, well, talk. But on my terms." Marcus and Angela came to my room, and we made a plan. We'd meet my family in a public place, the resort lobby, where there would be witnesses. I wouldn't be alone. And if things got out of hand, we'd have hotel security nearby. It felt absurd to need this level of strategy to talk to my own parents. But after the airport slap, I wasn't taking chances. 4 hours later, I was sitting in the lobby with Marcus on one side and Angela on the other when my family walked in. They looked terrible. My father's face was red and sweaty. My mother's hair was a mess. Lauren's eyes were puffy from crying. But instead of looking apologetic or ashamed, they all looked angry. Angry at me. My father spotted me immediately and stormed over. "What the hell were you thinking? Leaving us at the airport like that?" His voice was loud enough that other guests turned to stare. I stood up, keeping my voice calm. I was thinking, I'm tired of being disrespected. My mother rushed forward, her face crumpling. "We raised you better than this. Family doesn't abandon family." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Marcus stepped forward, his presence solid and reassuring. "Actually, ma'am, from what I understand, your family has been abandoning Christina for years." My father's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm Christina's colleague," Marcus said evenly. "And I'm here to make sure this conversation stays civil." My mother looked at me with something close to horror. "You told strangers our family business." "They're not strangers," I said. "They've shown me more kindness in 2 days than you've shown me in years." Lauren finally spoke up, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. We came all the way here to fix this, and you're being dramatic as usual." I pulled out my phone and showed them the credit report screenshot. "Let's talk about the credit card you opened in my name when I was 19. The color drained from my father's face. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Lauren looked away. "That was a misunderstanding," my father said weakly. "We were going to pay it back. It's been 16 years, I said. "You destroyed my credit. I couldn't rent apartments without cosigners. I couldn't get decent loans. All because you stole from me to fund Lauren's fantasies." My mother started crying. "We did what we had to do. Lauren needed help, and you were already successful. I was 19 and working minimum wage jobs." My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. "You committed fraud against your own daughter." Other hotel guests were definitely watching now, some with their phones out, probably recording. A hotel manager was making her way toward us. My father tried to salvage the situation. "Can we not do this here? You're embarrassing us. Like Lauren embarrassed me at the airport." I shot back, in front of hundreds of people. Lauren jumped in, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sick, okay? I have anxiety and depression. I can't function like you. I need support." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Mental illness is real and serious. But then I remembered the credit card fraud, the years of manipulation, the slap. "Then get real help, Lauren. Therapy, medication, treatment. Not enablement. Not stolen money. Not making me the villain every time you face a consequence." The hotel manager arrived, polite but firm. "Folks, I'm going to need you to lower your voices or take this conversation elsewhere. You're disturbing other guests." My father, humiliated, turned to the manager. "We're trying to have a family discussion. A family discussion that involves shouting and accusations." The manager raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps somewhere more private would be appropriate." My father looked at me. "Fine. Let's go to your room and talk this out like adults." "No," I said. "I'm not going anywhere private with you. Not after Lauren hit me and you blamed me for it." My mother gasped. "That's not fair." Lauren was upset. And I wasn't. My voice cracked. "I paid $11,000 for a vacation you're not even grateful for. Got assaulted in public, and somehow, I'm the bad guy." Marcus spoke up again. "What you all did to Christina is called financial abuse. And the slap? That's assault. She could press charges for both." My mother looked horrified. "You wouldn't. I already have." I lied. Well, half lied. I hadn't filed anything yet, but I had screenshots and legal consultation. I've documented everything. The credit card fraud, the assault. All of it. My father's face went white. "Christina, let's be reasonable. We're family. Then act like it," I said. My father opened his mouth, probably to argue or guilt-trip me, but hotel security had joined the manager. One of the guards, a large Samoan man with kind eyes, addressed my parents. Sir, Mom, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property. You're not registered guests here, and you're causing a disturbance. My father tried to argue, but the guard was immovable. You can leave voluntarily, or we can call the police. Your choice. Defeated and humiliated, my parents turned to leave. But before they did, I said one more thing. I haven't filed the police report yet. But if you ever contact me again without a genuine apology and a plan to pay back what you stole, I will. I'm done being your scapegoat. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Lauren screamed that I was destroying the family. My father just stared at me like he didn't recognize me. And then they left, escorted by security. I stood there shaking, Angela's arm around me, Marcus standing guard like a protective older brother. Other guests were whispering. The manager apologized for the scene and offered me a complimentary spa treatment. I thanked her and walked back to my room, my legs barely holding me up. Once inside, I collapsed onto the bed and cried. Not sad tears, not angry tears. Relief. I'd stood up for myself. I'd drawn a line. And I hadn't backed down. The next few days passed in a strange blur. My family checked into a budget hotel about 15 miles away, far from the resort. I know because my cousin Emma texted me. Emma and I hadn't been close growing up, mostly because my parents had cut off Aunt Diane and, by extension, Emma. But Shed reached out after hearing everything from her mother, and we'd been texting constantly. She was furious on my behalf and kept sending me supportive messages. You did the right thing. Don't let them guilt you. My parents sent a few more texts, but they were half-hearted and still laced with blame. My father. We can't believe you're doing this to us. My mother. Lauren is devastated. She can barely get out of bed. I blocked their numbers. I kept Aunt Diane's number active, and we talked every day. She told me stories about my grandmother, my father's mother, who had apparently been the same way. Shed favored my father over Diane, enabled his entitlement, and gaslit Diane her entire childhood. It's a generational pattern. Diane explained. Your father learned this behavior from his mother, and now he's repeated it with Lauren. But you, Christina, you're breaking the cycle. Diane invited me to visit her in Colorado after my trip to Hawaii. I'd love to get to know the niece I lost all those years with, and Emma would love to meet you properly. She's getting married next spring, you know? Shed love for you to be there. The invitation made me cry happy tears. I had family. Real family. People who actually cared about me, not what I could do for them. I spent the rest of my time in Maui actually enjoying myself. I did the sunset dinner cruise I'd originally booked, and it was magical. I sat at a table with a couple from Canada and a solo traveler from Oregon, and we talked and laughed like old friends. I took a helicopter tour of the island, soaring over waterfalls and volcanic cliffs, feeling more alive than I had in years. I got the complimentary massage the hotel manager had offered, and I almost fell asleep on the table from pure relaxation. I read 3 books on the beach, my toes in the sand, the sound of waves lulling me into peace. Marcus and Angela included me in their anniversary activities, treating me like I was part of their celebration instead of an imposition. We went to a traditional Hawaiian luau together, watched fire dancers, ate kalua pork, and learned to hula. Angela pulled me aside during dessert and said, You know, watching you stand up for yourself has inspired me. I've been letting my boss walk all over me at work. But if you can set boundaries with your parents, I can set boundaries with him. I hugged her, grateful beyond words for her friendship. On my second to last day in Maui, I got a call from Richard, my boss. I panicked for a second, worried that somehow the drama with my family had gotten back to the office, but Richard's voice was warm and relaxed. Christina, I hope I'm not interrupting your vacation. Marcus mentioned you were in Maui. It's fine, I said cautiously. What's going on? I wanted to talk to you about something, but it can wait until you're back if you prefer. No, it's okay. I'm just sitting on the beach. What's up? Richard cleared his throat. I've been impressed with your work for a long time, Christina. The project you led last quarter saved us a significant amount of money and opened up new revenue streams. I've been looking to expand our financial strategy division, and I'd like you to lead it. Senior Director of Financial Strategy. It comes with a substantial raise, a team of 5 analysts reporting to you, and a leadership role in company decision-making. I almost dropped my phone. Are you serious? Completely serious. You've earned this. You're one of the most reliable, innovative people we have. I should have promoted you a year ago, honestly. What do you say? I said yes. Of course I said yes. We talked details for a few more minutes, and then I hung up and stared at the ocean, stunned. My family had just imploded. My entire understanding of my childhood had shattered. And somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, my professional life was soaring. It felt surreal, but also, in a strange way, it made sense. I'd spent so much energy trying to earn my family's love and approval. Now that it'd stopped, I had energy to invest in myself, in my career, in my actual future. That night, I was packing my suitcase, getting ready to leave Maui the next morning, when a hotel staff member knocked on my door. She handed me an envelope. "This was dropped off at the front desk for you." I thanked her and opened it. Inside was a 4-page handwritten letter from my mother. The handwriting was shaky, and there were water stains on the paper that looked like teardrops. The letter started, "Christina, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to try." She went on to admit that she and my father had always been harder on me because I was capable and Lauren wasn't. "You were so smart, so independent. We didn't think you needed us the way Lauren did." She acknowledged the credit card fraud, calling it a terrible mistake that we should have told you about immediately. She wrote about her own childhood, being the middle child in a family of 5, always overlooked, always trying to prove herself. I didn't want Lauren to feel the way I felt, but I realize now that I made you feel that way instead. And am so sorry. The letter ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I need you to know that I see what we did now. I see the damage. And am heartbroken. You deserved better from us. You deserved everything. And we failed you. Am so sorry, Christina. I love you. I always have, even when I didn't show it the way I should have." I read the letter 3 times, sitting on my balcony under the stars. It wasn't enough to fix everything. Words on paper couldn't undo 16 years of fraud or a lifetime of neglect. But it was something. It was the first time my mother had ever truly acknowledged the harm they'd caused. The first time she'd taken responsibility instead of making excuses. I didn't know what to do with it, so I folded the letter carefully and put it in my suitcase. Maybe someday it'd be ready to respond. But not today. As I finished packing, my phone rang. It was Aunt Diane, but this time it was a video call. I answered, and her face filled the screen, smiling warmly. "I hope it's not too late to call." "Not at all," I said. "I'm just packing." "Well, I have someone here who wants to meet you." The camera shifted, and suddenly I was looking at a woman about my age with dark hair and green eyes. Emma. My cousin. We hadn't seen each other since we were kids, maybe 10 or 11 years old. "Christina." Emma's voice was warm and a little nervous. "Hi, I've been following your career online. I'm so proud of you, and I'm sorry we lost all those years." We talked for almost an hour. Emma told me about her life, her job as a veterinarian, her fiancé Tyler, who she was marrying next spring. She asked about my life, and I found myself opening up in a way I rarely did, telling her about work, about the promotion, about the mess with my parents. She listened without judgment, and when I finished, she said, "You're incredibly brave, you know that? And I'd really love for you to be part of my wedding. Would you be one of my bridesmaids?" I started crying, overwhelmed by the kindness of people who barely knew me but chose to include me anyway. "I'd love that," I managed to say. "I'd really love that." After we hung up, I sat on the balcony one last time, looking at the ocean under the moonlight. I thought about the woman I'd been a week ago, exhausted, overlooked, pouring all her energy into people who didn't appreciate her. And I thought about the woman I was becoming. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who could walk away from toxicity, even when it hurt. Someone who was building a life she actually wanted to live. I'd lost the family I was born into, but I'd found something better. I'd found myself. 6 months later, My life looked completely different. I was settled into my new role as Senior Director of Financial Strategy, leading a team of 5 brilliant analysts who actually respected me and valued my input. I'd moved into a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica with a view of the ocean from my bedroom window. Every morning, I woke up to sunlight and the sound of waves, and I felt grateful in a way I'd never experienced before. My credit score had improved dramatically after I disputed the fraudulent credit card account. The credit card company launched an investigation, confirmed I hadn't opened the account, and my parents were forced to take responsibility. They had to pay back the $12,700 plus penalties and interest. The total came to almost $18,000. I didn't feel good about it exactly, but I felt vindicated. They'd stolen from me, and now they were facing consequences. Real consequences. I hadn't fully reconciled with my family, and honestly, I wasn't sure I ever would. But I'd stopped being angry. Anger takes energy, and I needed that energy for building my new life. I was in therapy twice a week, working through childhood wounds and learning to set healthy boundaries. My therapist, Dr. Patel, was amazing. She helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't about me. It was about their own dysfunction, their own unresolved trauma, their own inability to be fair and loving parents to both their daughters. In late November, I flew to Colorado for Thanksgiving with Aunt Diane, Emma, and their extended family. It was the first holiday in my entire life where I felt truly welcomed. Diana's house was warm and cozy, full of laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. Emma's fiancé Tyler was there, along with Diane's husband Carl, who I barely remembered from childhood but who turned out to be hilarious and kind. We cooked together, told stories, played board games, and I laughed until my stomach hurt. Diane pulled me aside while we were making pies. "Your grandmother would be so proud of the woman you've become, Christina." I looked at her, surprised. "Did you know her well?" "Very well. She and I were close before she died. She always felt guilty about favoring your father. Near the end of her life, she told me she'd made terrible mistakes and that she hoped your father wouldn't repeat them with his own kids." Diana's eyes were sad. "I guess he did repeat them. But you're breaking the cycle. That takes incredible strength." On Christmas Eve, I got a call from Lauren. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was different, quieter, less defensive. "Can we talk?" "In person." I hesitated. "Why?" "Because I've been in therapy, real therapy, 3 times a week, and I need to tell you some things. I'm not asking for forgiveness or for us to be best friends. I just need you to hear me out." I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop in Los Angeles after I got back from Colorado. When Lauren walked in 2 weeks later, she looked different too. She was wearing minimal makeup, her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she seemed smaller somehow, less performative. We ordered coffee and sat in a corner booth. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren said, "I'm sorry. For the slap. For everything. For my whole life, really." I didn't respond, just waited. Lauren continued, her voice shaky. "I've been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I know that doesn't excuse anything. But it's helping me understand why I've acted the way I have, why I lash out, why I need constant validation, why I've been so terrible to you." She looked down at her coffee. "I've been enabled my whole life. Mom and Dad never made me face consequences for anything. Every time I messed up, they bailed me out. Every time I failed, they blamed someone else. And I let them. I let them make you the scapegoat because it was easier than looking at myself." Tears were running down her face now. "I got a job. A real job. I'm a receptionist at a dental office. It's not glamorous, but I show up every day. I have my own apartment with 2 roommates. I'm paying Mom and Dad back for all the years I lived at home rent-free. It's going to take me years to pay them back, but I'm doing it." She looked up at me. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Christina. I'm not asking for us to be close. I just needed you to know that I'm trying to be a better person." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back. In the end, I said, "I hope you keep growing, Lauren. I really do. But I need to protect myself. So let's take this slow." Lauren nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. Thank you for even meeting me. We finished our coffee in awkward silence, and when we left, we didn't hug or make plans to meet again. But something had shifted. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of understanding. My parents reached out too, through Aunt Diane, asking if I'd be willing to do family therapy together. They'd started couples counseling and individual therapy. They'd paid back the credit card debt. They'd written letters acknowledging their mistakes. They wanted to try to rebuild. I told Diane I wasn't ready yet. Maybe someday, but not now. And she understood. Healing happens on your timeline, not theirs, she said. In February, I started dating someone. His name was James, and I met him through Marcus and Angela at a dinner party. James was an architect, kind and thoughtful, with a great sense of humor. He knew my whole story, and instead of running away, he admired my strength. You walked away from toxicity and built a whole new life, he said on our third date. That's not easy. Most people just stay and suffer. We took things slow, but I felt hopeful in a way I hadn't in years. I joined a professional women's networking group and started mentoring younger women in finance. I traveled to Portland, Seattle, and Austin for work, gaining confidence with every presentation, every successful project. I planned a solo trip to Ireland for late spring, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to attempt. I took a salsa dancing class and discovered I loved it. I started painting watercolors on weekends, something I hadn't done since high school. I adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Piper who followed me everywhere and slept at the foot of my bed. My life became full in ways I'd never imagined, not full of drama or obligation or trying to earn love. Full of joy, full of purpose, full of people who actually valued me. And every morning when I woke up in my Santa Monica apartment, sunlight streaming through the windows, Piper snoring softly, I felt grateful. Grateful for the slap that changed everything, grateful for the courage to walk away, grateful for the life I was building on my own terms. In April, I flew back to Colorado for Emma's wedding. The mountains were still dusted with snow, and the sky was that perfect crystalline blue you only see at high altitude. The wedding was at a rustic lodge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a valley. It was small and intimate, about 70 guests, all people who genuinely loved Emma and Tyler. I stood as a bridesmaid in a soft lavender dress, next to two of Emma's best friends from veterinary school. During the ceremony, Emma and Tyler exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about partnership and respect, and choosing each other every single day. I cried, but they were happy tears. Hopeful tears. I was watching two people who actually knew how to love each other well, and it gave me faith that healthy relationships were possible. At the reception, Aunt Diane gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. She talked about family being more than blood, about how love is a choice we make every day, about how proud she was of Emma and Tyler for building a relationship based on mutual respect. Then she looked directly at me and said, "And I'm grateful for second chances, for the family members who find their way back to each other, even after years apart." I raised my glass, my throat tight with emotion. Later that night, I stood outside on the lodge's deck, wrapped in a shawl, looking at the stars. The air was cold and clean, and I could hear music and laughter from inside. Emma came out and stood next to me. "You okay?" she asked. "More than okay," I said honestly. "This was beautiful. You and Tyler are perfect together." Emma smiled. "You know what? You saved me too." I looked at her, confused. "How?" "Watching you stand up for yourself inspired me to set boundaries with my own toxic ex. I was in a relationship 2 years ago with someone who treated me terribly, lied to me, manipulated me, made me feel like I was crazy. I kept making excuses for him because I thought love meant enduring anything. But then I heard your story from my mom about how you walked away from your family at that airport, and something clicked. I realized I didn't have to accept crumbs from people who should give me love, so I left him. And 6 months later, I met Tyler. I felt tears sting my eyes. I had no idea. "You showed me that we're allowed to choose ourselves," Emma said. "That we don't have to tolerate abuse just because someone claims to love us." You probably saved my life, Christina. Or at least saved me from wasting more years on someone who didn't deserve me. We hugged, standing under the Colorado stars. Two cousins who'd lost years but found each other again at exactly the right time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window in my hotel room, looking out at the mountains, and I opened the Notes app on my phone. I started writing, trying to capture everything I'd learned over the past year. The words poured out. I used to think family meant enduring anything, forgiving everything, sacrificing endlessly. I thought love required me to shrink myself so others could feel bigger. I thought if I just tried hard enough, worked hard enough, gave enough, I would finally be seen, finally be valued, finally be enough. But I learned something in that airport terminal when my sister slapped me and my parents blamed me for my own humiliation. I learned that real love doesn't ask you to diminish yourself. Real love doesn't require you to tolerate abuse or fund dysfunction or set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Real love respects boundaries. Real love sees you. Real love celebrates you, not just tolerates you. I lost the family I was born into, but I found the family I deserved. I lost the role of the forgotten daughter, the scapegoat, the one who gave and never received. And I found myself, the real me, the woman who knows her worth, the woman who won't accept less than she deserves, the woman who can walk away from toxicity, even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even when people call her selfish for choosing herself. The slap in the airport wasn't the end of my family. It was the beginning of my freedom. And I would go through it all again. Every painful moment. To get here. To this place where I wake up grateful. Where I'm surrounded by people who actually value me. Where my life is mine. To anyone who's ever felt invisible in their own family, overlooked in their own life, like you're not enough, no matter how hard you try. Your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to build a life where you're not just tolerated but celebrated. It will be hard. It will hurt. There will be moments when you question everything. When the guilt feels unbearable. When you wonder if you made a mistake. But on the other side of that pain is a life you actually want to live. A life that's yours. A life where you matter. And you deserve that life. You deserve it so much. I saved the note and looked up at the mountains, feeling lighter than I had in years. The next morning, Marcus texted me. He and Angela had flown in for the wedding too, and they wanted to grab breakfast before the farewell brunch. We met at a small cafe in town, and Marcus handed me a cup of coffee with a smile. "You look happy," he said. "I am," I replied. "And I meant it." Angela leaned forward. "I have news. Remember how I said watching you set boundaries inspired me to do the same at work?" I nodded. Well, I finally confronted my boss about the way he talks to me, and either he was going to treat me with respect, or I was leaving. Guess what? He apologized. Actually apologized, and he gave me a raise. Marcus grinned. "She's a badass now. It's very attractive." We all laughed, and I felt a swell of pride, not just for Angela but for all of us. For everyone who finds the courage to say enough is enough. 1 month later, I was back in California, sitting in my office on the 15th floor of a building in Century City. Piper was asleep under my desk, which my company allowed because it argued that she improved my mental health and productivity. Outside my window, I could see the ocean in the distance, a strip of blue on the horizon. My phone pinged with an email from a young woman named Sarah who'd heard me speak at a professional conference the week before. The email read, "Dear Christina, I attended your talk about leadership and resilience, and something you said changed my life. You mentioned that sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is walk away from people who refuse to see our value. I've been in a toxic relationship with my family for years, always trying to earn their approval, always failing. Yesterday, I walked away. I'm terrified but also hopeful. Thank you for showing me it's possible." I wrote back immediately. "Dear Sarah, you're braver than you know. The fear you're feeling means you're doing something important. Keep going. You're building a life that's worthy of you, and that's the hardest and most important work you'll ever do. I'm proud of you." I hit send and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ocean. James was picking me up for dinner in a few hours. Emma had texted a funny meme to our cousin group chat. Aunt Diane had sent a photo of cookies she was mailing to me. My calendar was full of meetings, projects, a trip to Dublin in 3 weeks. My apartment was clean and bright and mine. My dog loved me unconditionally. My friends actually showed up when I needed them. My career was thriving. My heart was healing. My life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. I still sometimes missed my parents and wondered if we'd ever truly reconcile. I still felt sad about the childhood I didn't have, the family that could have been. But I also had something I'd never had before. Peace. The deep, quiet kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I closed my laptop, kissed Piper's head, and grabbed my purse. As I walked out of my office, past my team who were laughing about something, past Marcus who gave me a high five, into the elevator that would take me down to the street where James was waiting, I smiled. A real, genuine, unforced smile. I'd walked away from a family that didn't value me, and I'd walked toward a life that did. A life where I wasn't just surviving, but thriving. A life where I mattered. A life that was finally, beautifully, completely mine. True family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, love, and reciprocity. You cannot buy love or earn basic dignity through sacrifice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who refuse to see your value. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's the foundation of a life worth living. And on the other side of that painful boundary is a life where you're not just tolerated, but treasured. Where your worth isn't questioned but celebrated. Where you wake up grateful instead of anxious. Where you're free to be the person you were always meant to be. Your worth exists independent of anyone's ability to recognize it. Remember that. Hold on to that. Build your life on that truth. Because you deserve a life where you're not just seen, but celebrated. Where you're not just accepted, but cherished. Where you're not just enough, but more than enough. And that life is possible. I promise you, it's possible. Because I'm living it. And if I can find my way here, so can you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? Have you ever walked away from someone you loved because staying was hurting you? How did you find the courage? And what did you learn? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button. It helps others who need this message find it. And if you want more stories about resilience, healing, and finding your worth, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're allowed to choose themselves. That they're allowed to walk away. That their worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you know that you matter. That you're valuable. That you deserve love that doesn't require you to diminish yourself. And I hope you have the courage to build a life that reflects that truth. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.